Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Meredith Viguers. I have been in the Central Texas area for about 21 years now. I'm the owner of Let Us Do the Cooking, Central Texas premier catering company. We've been around 16 and a half years ago. So how many of you, just quick show of hands, have been in business longer than 5 years? Okay, so about half. How many of you have been in business longer than a year? Pretty much everyone, right? Okay, so have you ever had that moment when you've been around where you're just like, I'm done. Like, I can't pull another 80-hour week, right? And there's never enough cash in the bank. Everyone gets paid before I do. I'm over it. Relate? Yeah, everyone can, right? So here's what's crazy is that was me just a few short years ago. And like I said, I've been in business for 16 years. And what was crazy is that at the time that was going on, we were a 10-year-old company. We were 100 employees in, and we were the poster child for the Chamber of Commerce on how you start this small home-based business, you grow it into this huge success, and that was my nightmare. Because I didn't know any better, so when I built the business, I built it with all roads leading to my office. Like we joke about it now, but at one point in time, the answer to literally every question was my cell phone number. And so you can imagine at that point, it's not a great place to be. And what I ended up needing to do was just to do something to get my head back in a good positive space. And so I decided to go to one of those personal development seminars, right? Just to feel better, figure out some things, and honestly, to figure out if I wanted to continue with the business or not. I was at that point where I was really ready to just walk away. And so I went to this conference, was in Orlando, beautiful, sitting poolside, meeting new people, and I spent the entire week I was there complaining about the business I had built that I no longer liked. And it wasn't until the last day I was there that, and I'm a person of faith, but anybody ever grow up in church where you hear the same thing over and over and over again, but then one day it just clicks in a different way than it has before? And that's what happened. That last day I was there, it was that light bulb moment, and it was something so simple, was that I could change my mind. I could change my mind. And so that started me on a journey about 6 years ago, and it was thousands of hours and dollars that went into that process of really learning that the business could only grow as much as I grew. And so I began really working on growing myself. As that happened, the business started to grow again. So a 10-year-old business all of a sudden did 240% of sales. Well, then as I grew and the business grew, I was able to take a little bit of a step back and really start developing my team. As I developed my team, they started growing, and they were able to then take over the operations of the business so that it could grow without me. The only thing left to do at that point was to get out of my own way and let them keep running. So that's what I've spent the last several years doing. I run Mission Main Street now, which is designed to help people in the hospitality industry do the same thing so that they can learn how to change their mind, develop their people, and get out of the way. That way the business grows more profitably without their time. So I want to spend just the next few minutes kind of talking through that process a little bit, give you guys, obviously, in 15 minutes, we're not getting through the whole thing, but I'll give you guys a little bit of information about what that process looks like so that hopefully you can take something that we talk about today, and even if it just gives you one thing you can do within 5 minutes of the time you leave here, it moves your business forward in the right direction. So when I talk about changing your mind, I think the easiest analogy to give, just because people understand it, is you can't change something you don't own. So the biggest key for me in changing my mind was realizing that whatever limitations had been put on the business, regardless of the outstanding circumstances, I put them there. At some level, I was responsible for every single thing that was going on in the business at that time. And so if you think about it like owning a home, right? What happens when you're a renter in a house? You go in, you can't even put a picture up on the wall because you can't put a hole in it. You can't change the paint color. You can't tear down a wall if you want to open up a room because you don't own it. But the second you own the home instead of rent it, you can knock out whatever wall you want to. You can paint it all purple. You can put holes in the walls, as long as you want, because you own it. It's the same thing in business. So where I was at that point is we were a 10-year-old company. We were doing well by all outside accounts. And I felt like, well, we've got our market share. This is where we are. We have most of the business in the area. This is as good as it gets. And if that was as good as it got, I was gone. I was done. didn't want to deal with it anymore. And so the first thing I did when I came back is I said, okay, I put that lid, right? Anybody familiar with John Maxwell, the law of the lid? I put that lid on the company, and because my thought process put us there, I was the only one who could make the adjustment to get us out. So the second I said, all right, there's gotta be more that I don't know about, and I just don't know what I don't know. So I'm open to the fact that there's business out there that I'm not aware of, and I will remain open. So there will be phone calls that we would get that I would assume weren't gonna go anywhere, so I would just let them go. I said, okay, we're not gonna do that anymore. We're gonna really be open to every single thing that comes in. And literally a 10-year-old company did 240% of revenue that year. And that doesn't happen very often, and especially not when you're already an established company, right? It's easy in the first few years for those things to happen, but the farther down the road you get, the more complicated that becomes. So that happened then. The other thing though is my staff started to see me relax a little bit. They started to see me own everything that came in, but not own all of the questions, right? So what began to happen is I had to empower them and develop them in the process of growing the business. So quick tip for anybody who's trying to get out of being the question answerer, don't answer. Simply don't answer. I went through this process and it was 6 painful months, so I will say that up front. I refused to answer a single question, not one. And they got to the point where they said, don't even bother, she's not gonna answer anyway. And the trick was, don't come to me with a challenge, come to me with what your solution to the challenge was, and then we'll have a conversation about whether or not we would do it the same way next time. And so today, we run 6 companies, and I don't work in any of the businesses. I work on them, but I don't work in them. And so that's how we're able to continue to expand and grow. Well, so the next step after I had to change my mind was really to begin to develop my people. I have a phenomenal team. And learning how to build a team is one of the most challenging, but also most rewarding skills that there is as a business owner. And so we've got people that have been with us 13 years. Our management team has been with us on average 8 years or longer, and we're in the food service business. Like that doesn't generally happen, and it's because we've learned how to really cultivate and develop that team. Now, when I say develop a team, most people go to technical skills, right? I'm in the remodeling business. I need to teach them how to, do the carpet right, or I need to teach them how to follow the fitness plan, or, whatever it is. That's actually not what I'm talking about at all. When I talk about developing people, I'm talking about developing them as a human being. So think about this from an employee standpoint. When was the last time that you think most employees ever had their boss come up to them and say, hey, what's important in your life right now? What are you here for? Beyond a paycheck, because you gotta live, like, what are you trying to do with this? Are you saving for a house? Do you just wanna go on vacation this year? Is it just Christmas needs to be better? What is it that really matters to you and is so important in your life at the moment? So when I have this first conversation with a new employee, they almost fall out of their chair. No one's ever cared before. No one's ever cared. So when I start to develop them as a person, I'm talking about the things that are important to them. Well, guess what happens? They all of a sudden want to do things that are important to the business, not because their job is any different than it was before. It's just because I cared about what's important to them at that point in their life. And then we continue to have conversations about what I can do to help them get what's important to them. It's just that simple. So as you begin to develop your people, you can teach skill at any point in time. So one of the things we do is when we're hiring, we always hire for values. And as long as they've got about 70 to 80% of the skill set that I need for that position, they're gonna be a great fit on the team. Because I can teach that last 20% very easily. But if someone's values don't align with our company core values, doesn't matter how good they are, it's not gonna work. So if core values is not something that you have written down, physically visible for people in your organization to see, there's your one thing to do. Right after you leave here today, write down a set of 4 or 5 core values, and I'm not talking about honesty, that's so generic. Be specific, and make sure it's specific to what you do, but it needs to be posted in an area that the whole team knows that they align with what the company values are. So as you hire for values and you teach skill, you begin to build a team of people who inherently feel the same way that you do about what you're doing. Well, when you have that team of people, they work together in a really unique way. And then when you care about them as people and they get to share what's happening in their lives, they become caring about each other as people. So the team gels even more. What is unique about this is when you get a group of people like this, then the third step becomes possible, which is for you to get out of the way, right? Because they will work without you because they value the same thing that you value and they know that you value them. So at that point, this is a really simple thing and it is not easy. Getting out of the way, and I would love to tell you like I did this textbook right. I did not. I was forced into it. And what happened is we had this huge field exercise that we were catering out on the other side of Fort Hood. 4,000 soldiers, Tennessee National Guard, 2 meals a day for 30 days, and we were in the field with them. Our kitchen was in the tent, the dining room was in the tent. We had to hire 100 new people. I mean, it was a massive type thing. And so we get out there the first weekend, and I get a phone call. My husband is a firefighter and paramedic, and I get a phone call from his captain that says, hey, something's going on. We're not really sure what's wrong with John. We're gonna take him over to the ER. Symptoms are kind of presenting like a stroke, but we don't know what happened. He's got some memory loss and he doesn't know where he is right now. So I go back into the dining room. We're getting ready for dinner. My kitchen manager and my lead event manager see my face and they're like, what is wrong? So I said, don't worry about it. Let's get through dinner. And they said, no, what's going on? So I told them. And my kitchen manager looked at me and he goes, leave, go. I said, no, guys, we've got 4,000 soldiers getting ready to come through here. I can't go anywhere. Like this, we just got out here. This is all brand new. And this is like a make or break type thing for our company. And he said, go now. I said, no, Dee, I'm not going to get in the car right now. He said, if you don't go get in the car, I'm putting you in the car, leave. And so I left, drove to the hospital, and my kitchen manager and my lead event manager gathered the team around, told them what was going on, and 4 different people raised their hand and said, you know what, I'll take on more, I'll run that team, I'll handle this. They were ready for that, but because I was there, I put the lid on their capabilities. So as soon as I was removed from the situation, they got the opportunity to step up and show us what they were capable of. So what's cool about that is that was 5 years ago. All of those people that raised their hand that day are still with us today. So what happened is after that situation occurred, I got back out to the field and I realized, okay, there's something to this. Now how do I take what happened? And by the way, my husband was fine, but it wasn't a stroke. He just wasn't breaking down protein powder in his system. But how do I now take what I've learned, I was causing a problem, again, own it, right? And then develop this into a system so that we can now continue this process as we go. And that became the beginning of, all right, I'm not answering any more questions. You guys showed me you don't need me here. So next time you come to me, all I'm gonna say is, what did we do the last time? And then I'm gonna let you sit with that until you can remember what we did the last time. And if you can't remember what we did the last time, make something up and we'll see if it works this time. Here's the biggest key. Your team has to know that it's okay to fail. If they are scared that they're gonna get in trouble if they do something wrong, they will never step up and take responsibility. So one of the biggest lessons we learned in that process of getting out of the way is making sure that they understand if something didn't go the way it was supposed to, I need to know about it immediately, and then I need to know what you did to fix it. And that's it. And because we created a culture that they are not concerned, nobody ever has to worry about covering something up. You guys ever seen that before, right? You know they did something wrong anyway, but they're gonna try and cover it up so that you don't know about it. We all find out about it. So why not just make it an easy, open situation for them to be able to share that information, provided that they come up with a solution for it as well. And so that began the process of me really removing myself from the business. And today, if I choose to, I might work in that company 10 hours or so a week. And most of that is just around the marketing. So I still cast the vision. I bring in, even though I do coaching and consulting work for other businesses, I bring in an outside consultant that works with my leadership development team, because when you're in the picture, it's hard to see it from outside the frame. So he comes in to work with my team, and that way they know that I'm not just interested in them as people, but I'm investing in them as people. And the biggest confidence boost you can give to your team is knowing that you're willing to invest in them beyond just a paycheck. And so today, that company has now grown. We went from, at that point, about 50 employees. We're at about 120 right now. We lived through COVID, right? And because we were able to stay strong as a company and survive that process, and I don't have time to get into it today, but a lot of that had to do with really being clear on our numbers, because we had to be able to move really fast and adapt to a lot of things. We specialize in events of 500 plus people. Clearly what wasn't happening for 2 years was events of 500 plus people. And so, but because we were able to adapt so quickly during that process, and our team is used to the way that we operate, we survived. We're one of the only ones who survived. So our market share has grossly expanded just because we were able to move with things as they moved along. So those are just a few of the things that we work with a lot of the small businesses that I do consulting work with, that we've seen that process, and it plays out a little bit differently for each person, but that process time and time and time again has been successful. And so just to give you a quick example, one of our companies is Sweet Bee Garden Honey. You can buy it at H-E-B. And when that company first came to me, I didn't own it initially. They just needed a commercial kitchen to operate in, because that's, from a manufacturing standpoint, you have to be in a licensed facility. So I said, sure, you can rent the kitchen, come in one day a week, that kind of thing. And it was about 12 months later that she came in and said, I'm working full time. I can't afford to pay the rent. I know there's got to be money in this, but I can't find it right now. I don't know what's going on. And I said, well, how about we have just a quick conversation, bring your numbers in, let's talk about what it looks like. And she went, what numbers? I said, P&L balance sheet. What's that? I said, all right, how do you keep your books? Are you using QuickBooks? No, I take my receipts to the accountant. What do you, you physically take paper to the accountant's office? Yep, once a month. I'm like, okay, well, how often do they give you your reports? Well, they file my taxes at the end of the year. And I went, how do you know how much you're making, how much you're spending, anything? Crickets. And so I immediately went to, okay, number one, quick mindset change. Number two, you need some systems and processes. You need some people who will take care of this. And she goes, well, I don't have time for that. What's it going to cost? And I said, 50% of the company. And she goes, okay. So literally, and she was still working a full-time job. All it took was for me to go into it, bring it online, because this is not 1980. So bring it online, get the account set up, but bring in a team member, let them develop out the organization. So I didn't go into it. They went into it. Put together the operation, put together a system, let's get a process going, and we go to work. We grew the company by 300% in 3 months. So it doesn't take a lot to put those things in place. It just takes having a system and knowing the direction you're gonna go with the right people, and any company can see massive growth. So I think we're about at time here, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit pause. I don't know if you want questions or...
Yeah, let's go ahead and do just a few questions if anyone's got some questions.
Yeah.
How would you help somebody who is basically low on income but needs advertisements? Have you actually dealt with that situation before?
Yeah, so one of the biggest myths right now in business is that offline marketing no longer works. So people feel like they need to spend a ton of money on their online marketing. They feel like they need to do all the pay-per-clicks and the direct response and all these kind of things, which, don't get me wrong, those can work, but they're leaving offline alone, and that is still the most effective method of marketing anywhere on the planet. So it's just a matter of networking. It's a matter of getting into groups that, this area specifically, if you're working with clients in this area, is still, it's a big small town, right? So population-wise, it's kind of large, but the percent of the population that stays here long-term is still a pretty small, tight-knit community. So if you find ways to get in there, this has been part of what I did years ago with getting into the chambers. I didn't go join a chamber and say, okay, my name is on your website, bring me business. We went in and joined, and then I said, what do we need to do to serve you? How do we help, right? And so I didn't go to just the networking hours. I would go in and say, okay, do you need someone on the board who can do this? Do you need someone in the office who can do this? And we would just volunteer to help in any possible way, because we had to break into, now at that time, it was definitely still the good old boy network in this area. And a 26-year-old woman trying to break into it didn't go over so well initially, and it took a lot of effort. But those are the people that if you walked into any of them and said, hey, I'm looking for a caterer, if it took them more than 5 seconds to say, call, let us do the cooking, I'd be ticked, because they all know, right? So it's just a matter of that offline piece is still the best source of marketing you have. So, if revenue's low, it's free, right? So I would just go there. Now, it does take more time, right? So there's always an offset, right? If something is online and you pay for it, it probably doesn't take much time. If it's offline and it's free, it's going to take a little more effort. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, well, I need your business card, by the way.
Yep. Yep, I do mine. It's an electronic card, but I'll get it to you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yep. Anybody else? Yeah.
I can definitely relate to everything that you're going through. And a lot of military, I'm talking to a lot of military soldiers is getting out, retiring, and they want to start their own business. And everything that you're saying is helping them to relate to what they did in the military about building a team. And the only thing they need to add is marketing, how to do it.
What most of them need to understand, and this is something that small business owners, quite honestly, get wrong all the time, is that I don't care what your business is, that's not your business. Your business is marketing in the area that you happen to work in. And yeah, if you ever stop marketing, you don't get to open business anymore and just say, when you build it, they will come. It doesn't work like that, right? You have to drive traffic constantly. So yes, you're a DJ, but not really. You're a marketer who happens to offer DJ services. And so if you constantly keep that front of mind, it changes the outlook on things. And I used to think during certain seasons, our business has been fairly seasonal over the years, and during the holidays, we are so slammed. I mean, literally to the point where there are nights that my cooks just sleep in the building. There's no point in going home, And so I used to think, well, we'll stop marketing during that time because we can't take on any more business anyway. And what we had to learn the really hard way is if we let our foot off the gas when it came to it during that period of time, we would hit January and it was like hitting a brick wall. I mean, it just stopped. So what we've had to learn now is creative ways to market where we're not marketing for the holidays because we are already going to be busy, but we're marketing for post-holidays, and we can't ever let our foot up off the gas for that. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else?
Do you work the other way around? So like what we have is online at Mind and Body. We're strictly online. And
Yep.
I came to you 2 years and wanted to open a gym. Help me do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing that, especially for small business, that you have to realize is that while there might be large variations in the industries that we're in, the business side of things is pretty similar from one to the next, right? The other thing is when you're working in physical spaces, generally speaking, as far as developing teams and all of that, you're dealing with lower skill, lower income type employee. So it doesn't matter if they're working in food service or at a gym, we're gonna have similar experiences, right? And so those are the kinds of things that people really have to pay attention to. Yeah. Anybody else? Good?
Guys, let's give it up for Meredith.